Hello, I'm Zara Imtiaz, editor of the Asian Feed magazine, welcoming you to another Asian Agribiz podcast. Today, Isa Q Tan, our regional correspondent in the Philippines, is talking with Dr. Erwin Joseph Cruz about how raising of colored birds has changed over the years and where colored bird farming is heading today. Dr. Cruz is a poultry veterinarian who since 1987 has been helping raise the standard of colored bird farming in the country.
Hi, Doc Erwin. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking time to join me in this podcast.
Yes, thank you, Isa, for inviting me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to be part of this interview with you.
Raising colored birds has changed over the years, and more producers seem to be venturing into it. I'd like to talk to you about these changes and where you think colored bird farming is headed today. But before that, can you please tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, I'm Dr. Erwin Joseph Cruz. I'm the pioneer veterinarian in free-range poultry production and collared chicken breeding and production in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia since 1997. And I have been doing programs that are helping smallholders and medium-scale holder farmers in the provinces to have their own program of genetic collared chicken production in their localities. It has been 25 years, but it is developing in time.
When you talk about colored birds, are they basically the same in the different countries in the region?
In the Asian or ASEAN side of things with chicken, they also have their indigenous and native chickens themselves. They call it in Indochina, in Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, kampung chicken. The word kampung means village chicken. There is a market for that in the villages, in the provinces, and they prefer the chicken taste to be there. Because one thing that lacks with the fast growing chicken right now, the broilers, it has not grown and matured enough to be more chicken taste. In this context, that development in ASEAN region has slowly increased the demand for kampung chicken. Now, they also have their programs on free range, but on the commercial scale, because if it is already a situation of hybridization, the genetic companies come in. There are different genetic companies.
What are the advantages and also the disadvantages of raising these colored birds?
Okay. The hardiness of the colored chicken are quite exemplary, that they are also capable of growing in variable feeding conditions or suboptimal conditions, etc. Because if you are still in the province, the scarcity of feed sources is also is a problem. We call these colored chickens as the four-wheel drive chicken, because it can go with the variances of getting corn grits alone, or they can survive on a lesser suboptimal nutritional level of feeds and still hit the target, near the target of harvest, which is for meat, it's about 60 to 70 days at about 1.4 kilos to 1.5 kilos. The main advantage of this collar is that, as I've said, it's hardy. It can be ranged, it can be caged, it can be placed on suboptimal feeding conditions like middlings or food scraps, which is is common in the provinces. What are the advantages in terms of business? It is actually, we can call a small and medium scale business for poultry. In my opinion, it cannot be up to a high commercial level right now at this time, because feed efficiency is the main, and the cost of producing is still a bit higher as compared to white. So it is more really focused for provincial kampung setup, more for far-flung areas where access to chicken is not really that good, and then some areas that are really isolated in terms of access to feeds and other sources of feed materials.
But there is a growing demand for colored birds in the market, even in the urban centers, right?
Actually, it's considered as premium if you are in the urban center. It's not easy to access. But what we see right now is that because of the high demand and the scarcity of it, because productivity-wise, it's not that productive comparatively. And also, if you see the setup in the Philippines, it is more on the commercial integration. But when you go to Malaysia, to Vietnam, to parts of Thailand, not the whole Thailand, Indonesia, it is not the same. There's a big part of the population that prefers this kind of chicken over the white commercial chicken that we usually get. So these are the markets that we see that are expanding, because so much so that the demand is so high that the supply is low, the prices are really up. Recently, I saw in Singapore, the price is around 50% higher in terms of the regular white broilers. Yeah.
In Southeast Asia, is it only in the Philippines where demand for colored bird is still low? Why is that?
Yes, so that's what I see. And I think part of it is in Thailand, where the production of chicken has been taken over by integration already, in
Okay.
such a way that the process, the logistics, the dressing, etc., has been designed around this kind of white chicken setup. So that's also one problem. The post-harvest facilities are not in place with the colored chicken. So as comparing it with the white commercial ones.
Doc, how are colored birds being raised today? What's the difference between then and now?
Okay. Before, what we see as backyard chicken is basically backyard chicken. You give it excess rice or whatever is left over on the table. You give it to. When advent of free range chicken came in, when I was starting with the Saso company in the Philippines, the development accelerated because there's science already into it. Before, there was no science. Everything is what we call anecdotal way methods of growing it. But now there's science. There is a parent stock. There's a commercial F1, and then the commercial F1 is only grown for terminal use or for meat or for egg production. When you say that you will feed it at 3.2 kilos and it will reach 1.4, 1.5 at 70 days, it can be achievable. Not like before, if it is a variable genetics, which I call OGK. OGK means only God knows what results you will have later on, is that you don't have a pattern of science-based, replicable, doable, in such a way that in any time of the year, you can still have the results. Even with the eggs right now. With the eggs before this program came in, you get about 80 eggs per hen per year, per cycle. But now we're hitting 300 eggs per hen per cycle right now, because with the help of good genetics, good selection, scientific-based program of breeding stations, as well as farmers learning. As I was pushed in the different programs that I do, an educated farmer, successful farmer, it embeds the knowledge with them, and then they use these genetics as tools to get the sustainable farming at the end.
So, what are the current issues or concerns in raising these birds? Are they more resilient to diseases?
Well, still the main foundation is the biosecurity. If you have a good biosecurity in your farming, you taught the farmer how to prevent diseases to occur. Plus the added resiliency of this kind of genetics. Because once they range and then sometimes it rains, no? Sometimes it becomes sunny. They are more robust when it comes to preventing problems. However, there's still a limit. If you're not really doing your proper biosecurity measures, they will succumb to the same disease as the white.
In the Philippines, what is limiting the production of colored birds?
As what I see in the Philippines, there are some regions that are really, they prefer this chicken over the white commercial because of the taste. They like the native provincial taste, etc. However, the question is the availability. For example, in Metro Manila, there will be an increase in demand if there is an available stock. But I don't see any level that it will be near the white chicken production and consumption.
So you don't see it reaching the level of commercialization as white broilers, at least not here in the Philippines.
Not at this time. I don't see it at this time or maybe the next 5 or 10 years. But it is developing at a pace that is much more significant and
Okay.
faster because you guys are really aware of this kind of farming already as compared to 15 years ago when some people just laugh at me when I say free range chicken. So it has developed, but it's a slow process.
Going back to how the birds are raised, please describe the production systems currently in place. Any similarities to the production of the white broilers?
Yeah, since we only have the tools that are available mostly from the white commercial products like broiler feeds, layer feeds, in terms of nutrition, we just use that. But we know that that is actually over spec for colored chicken. Things are limited for us to develop in terms of those things because we don't have the integration and the economies of scale is not enough to create that. Now, in terms of the biosecurity example vaccination, we have simple ND vaccination, IBD vaccination, and then IB vaccinations are simple. We don't have too much in one batch. Also, in terms of the housing, we have developed it in such a way that it is similar to year 1980s, 1990s, open-sided housing, elevated, but more stern on biosecurity, foot baths, changing of footwear, not multi-age growing, etc. So these things have converged in such a way that we develop a specific system for colored chicken production
Okay,
by borrowing from the white and
from the
also
white.
the general concept of biosecurity. Even the housing, one thing that I learned from other countries is that they really give a hard thinking on investing on good housing, good location, good biosecurity, and good structures. No? Here in the Philippines, there are farmers still, they tend to shortcut things so much because this is the available land. It is beside the broiler house of another farmer. It's okay because it's free or you can use it. Those should not be reasons why you should go into that kind of farming. Also, we need to further educate our farmers and newbie farmers. That is why I always go back to the uneducated farmer, successful farmer, because if you know the things that you can avoid and you can prevent, that inevitably can affect your cash flow or your farming business, you should not be doing those things, right?
So today it is a more systemic production system with focus on biosecurity.
And one thing, I tell them there are some red zones that you have to look into: markets, cockpit arenas, and most especially poultry supplies, because that's where you buy your feeds. And once you get your feeds, you just don't bring them immediately to the chicken. You have to hold them up for 24 hours, change your footwear before going inside. So some of the farmers learned a lot. That's why some of them are surviving. They are now aware and educated on those things.
Okay. In terms of production cost, how does colored birds compare to white commercial broilers?
Definitely it's higher because the growth rate is lower. The feed conversion is higher. We are hitting around per bird at 1.4 only at 70 days or 1.5. We're hitting at around 180 pesos to 185 per bird. However, the market, as you said before, in this kind of chicken is around 220 to 230 pesos per kilo live. So the farmers are still surviving with that kind of markup.
Okay. Those are relatively substantial margins, Doc Erwin. With that potential, does it not attract bigger producers to invest?
What I see is that the numbers that you'll be producing will be too much for the consumers later on to consume because of the volume of production or the economies of scale to earn well. But the surplus can occur. So It might occur because of you have. So if you
Okay.
don't have those facilities along the way to hold over the meat or the dressed chicken, you have problems later on. Number two, what I see, I don't know because we've tested it already with the integrator and the others. They tell me, Doc, really the price is very high for us to make it more healthy for us to maintain. We just need to maintain it because for the sake of, it's part of the package that as a integrator. However, what I see is that free-range chicken production is a collective business, that it requires different farmer partners who are producing on a small scale, or a cooperative business in that sense, that has to help each other create a certain small dressing plant, a small chilling facility, and a market. No? That is how I see the market goes later on, that it will be collective. For example, in one province, you have about 100 grow out farmers. They produce. There's a central hub where they can dress, and there's a market that the group can push the product to. But you cannot put it at a level or the level of a commodity level like the white chicken.
Okay.
It's not viable. I've seen the risk and development will not be that good for the.
Do you think it's the same in our neighboring countries that have higher demand for colored birds?
Yes, I think there are big companies in Indonesia and in Thailand that really tried it, but they see that the market that they're going into is not that big for them to scale it up so high to make it more profitable for them. So
Okay.
there is a big disconnect between the market and the volume that they see, because their mindset is already with the volume, bigger margins, etc. It cannot be done in this kind of chicken. However, it is seen in other countries, but not enough to put it in a level of an integration or a commodity poultry product.
Okay. Well, thank you, Doc Erwin, for sharing with us your insights about colored birds. I wish you the best of luck in furthering the industry.
Thank you, Isa, and hoping for a bright future in the industry with all these challenges.
Colored bird farming indeed has come a long way, and there is market waiting to be served. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. For more on Asia's animal protein industry, please visit www.asian-agribiz.com.